Hello, this video is for geometry and 8th grade math, day 14. So 8th grade math, you are doing this video on Tuesday, January 29th. And then geometry, you will do this video on Friday, February 1st, I believe. Okay, so the first part of ELT, we are reviewing transversals. So when a transversal cuts through parallel lines, a lot of crazy things happen with our angles. So, like I told you all before, make your X's and O's. So all X's have the same angle. All O's have the same angle. So for example, this is 55. All of these other angles equal 55 degrees. Now the X's are not the same as O's, so they don't equal 55. But I do know that if I add an X plus an O, I will get 180. So to figure out what the X's are, I need to do 180 minus 55 and I get 125 for all of my X's. So since the question mark was by something I marked in X, the measure of the missing angle was 125 degrees. Looking at number 2, I want to know the value of the question mark. So once again, I make my X's and O's. And I notice that 77 is an O, as well as the missing angle. So the missing angle equals 77 degrees. So these angles are congruent, and in geometry we call them alternate exterior angles. And then you would do number 3 the same way. I'm making my X's and my O's, my X's and my O's. I see that 62 degrees and the missing angle are not congruent, so I would do 180 minus 62. And I get 118 degrees. For the next part, you are identifying each pair of angles as corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, vertical, or adjacent. So guys, these angles right here that I'm underlining are for congruent angles only. So I would have to have 2 X's or 2 O's. Adjacent means one's an X and one's an O. So when I look here, I would make my X's and O's, X's and O's. Okay, so these two angles, one's an X and one's an O. They're adjacent. And then I would look at number 13, for example. I make my X's and O's, X's and O's. So I see that Y and X are both O's. So that means they can be corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, or vertical. They cannot be adjacent because adjacent is for angles that are not the same. So they're both inside the parallel lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So I would call that alternate interior angles. After you do that, you end with some graphing review. So you need to state the coordinates for each point. So for example, for point F, I would write point F. And then I would write negative 19, comma 10. And then move on to the other one. Okay, and after you do that, you're going to get some practice with reflections translations, and rotations. Remember, a reflection is when we flip. So I'm going to reflect across the x-axis, meaning I'm going to go here and I'm going to go flip it below. So I do it 1 point at a time. So since h is 1 below the x-axis, I would just make it 1 above. Since g is 1, 2, 3, 4 above, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'd make it 4 below. F is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below. And then E is 2 above, it's just going to be 2 below. So that is what I get when I reflect it on the x-axis. Translation means I'm literally moving the shape. So I'm not flipping it, I'm just moving it. So this says 4 units left and 1 unit up. So I'm literally going to take each point and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 up. And I'm going to call that S prime. And then I do it with R. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1. R prime. Q, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1. Call it Q prime. And then T, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go 1 up. Okay, the other 3 we just learned, or if you're in my 4B class, we haven't learned any of this yet, so I appreciate you trying your best. So if I rotate clockwise around about the origin, clockwise is this direction, just like a clock. So 90 degrees means I'm going to move it over here to this quadrant. So when I do that, my points are going to change. And then same thing down here. If I rotate 180 degrees about the origin, this would be going 90, and then 180, it's going to land over here. And then same thing for number 40. For number 40, I'm going to rotate it up 1, up 2, and it's going to land right here. Sorry, just needed to get some more paper. So guys, when we rotate clockwise, some things happen to our X and Y values. So when I rotate 90 degrees clockwise, my points switch. So my Y and my X's switch, and my X's negative. So for example, I look at point L. Point L is 2, negative 2. Okay, L prime would become, okay, so my X and Y are going to switch. So it becomes negative 2, 2, but then my X also needs to become negative. So L prime becomes negative 2, negative 2. So the same thing happens to all the points. For point M is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1. For M prime, I'm going to switch my X and Y, and then my X also becomes negative. So M prime is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for N is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And prime would become, so my y switches with my x, and my x becomes negative, -4, -4. And then my k was 2, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my k prime, my y is going to switch, and then my x value is going to become negative. So be -5, -2. And that would be my k prime. So it just kind of spun and changed positions, but it only traveled 90 degrees. For 180, it's actually a little bit easier. So for 180 degrees, the x and y's stay the same, but they're just the opposite sign. So for example, for j, it's 1, comma, -1. So I switch the sign, and I get -1, comma, 1. So they both flip signs. And I would plot -1, and then I would go up 1. Notice how it goes where I knew it had to go to rotate 180 degrees. And then you would do the same thing for the other point. So for point K, it's 1, comma, -3. When I rotate 180 degrees, I'm just changing the sign of my x and y values. This becomes -1, +3. So -1 up 1, 2, 3. I think this is an I. For I, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, comma, 0. When I switch the signs, it's just going to be -5, comma, 0. And then last but not least for H, 5, comma, -3. When I rotate it 180 degrees, it's just going to be opposite, -5, comma, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's H prime. And that's it, rotated 180 degrees.